everyone, welcome back to Brass Gaming. I'm your host Christian, alongside me is the new co-host, I guess, at the moment?
At the moment, yes. And I'm Drew.
And so, you know, for Drew's first episode, we wanted to take it kind of easy on him, and by easy, I want to give him some trauma from the fact of the deck we're talking about.
Yeah, because you haven't, beaten me constantly with this deck we're talking about, on multiple occasions.
This deck can be a little bit miserable, but so today we're talking about Pako and Haldan, or as you would know from the thumbnail of this video, the old man and the goodest boy. And so we wanted to talk about something right quick, which was the concept of these type of episodes, which is brass brewing. Now, originally when we came up with this idea, we were going to do a budget. We had a strict budget of where we're going to go to the card shop with like $100 and our bulk box. Well, brass brewing kind of took on a new life of its own, where instead of it being like a restriction, which we might go back to at some point for a new type of episode, we decided that it was just going to be an episode with no budget restrictions and just us brewing to our heart's content. And so, as always, guys, the deck list is going to be in the description box below. And also, I mean, you guys have been on YouTube long enough. We just need you guys to like, share, subscribe, and comment. It really helps us out a lot, and well, we'd appreciate it. And I totally stole that joke from Drew. He said that earlier.
Where's my compensation for that?
So let's get right into it. So let's talk about the partner commanders for this deck, which is Haldan, Avid Arcanist, and Pako, Arcane Retriever. So Haldan, Avid Arcanist, is 2 colorless and a blue for a legendary creature human wizard. He has partner with Pako, Arcane Retriever. He reads, you may play non-creature cards from exile with fetch counters on them if you exiled them, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. So alone, he doesn't do anything. He's also a 1/4. Alone, he doesn't do anything, but when he really shines is when you bring the good boy out, and that's Pako, Arcane Retriever. For 3 colorless, red and a green, he's a legendary creature, elemental dog, because he did get errated. He has partner with Haldan, Avid Arcanist. He has haste. Whenever Pako, Arcane Retriever attacks, exile the top card of each player's library and put a fetch counter on each of them. Then you put a +1/+1 counter on Pako for each non-creature card exiled this way, and it is a 3/3.
So, leave your storm decks at the door.
Yeah. Pako is, I mean, he's super sweet. Just the fact that he can play some, disruption sometimes against your opponent's deck, because I've hit some pretty relevant spells quite a few times with Pako against multiple players.
I'm multiple players.
Yeah. Pako and Haldan are super sweet commanders, and we'll get into why. So the first thing that I like to do with this deck is take extra combat steps. And there's multiple in this deck, but I'm going to highlight 3 of the more interesting ones that I think I have in the deck. So this first one is Fury of the Horde. For 5 colorless, red, it's a sorcery. It reads, you may exile 2 red cards from your hand rather than pay Fury of the Horde's mana cost. So it can be free for a couple red cards, which, not horrible. And then it reads, untap all creatures that attack this turn. After this main phase, there is an additional combat phase followed by an additional main phase. So, pretty self-explanatory. Pako wants to hit. He is a truck that just keeps chugging along. You just want to get as many combats and as many stuff as you can to keep Pako going. The next one is, I think, one of the best ones in the deck, which is Seize the Day. For 3 colorless and a red, it's a sorcery. It reads, untap target creature. After this main phase, there's an additional combat phase followed by additional main phase. Essentially the same thing as Fury of the Horde, but costs a lot less. And it has flashback for 2 colorless and a red, and if you don't know what flashback is, I'll read the rules text. You may cast this card from your graveyard for its flashback cost and exile it. So essentially this is good for 2 uses, which, I mean, I've done it multiple times where I've casted this, untapped Pako, attacked, flashed this back, and you have some synergies in this deck that allow you to just keep chugging along.
But just no one else gets a turn.
Yeah, no one else gets one. And then the final one that I think is kind of spicy is World at War. For 3 colorless, red, it's a sorcery. After the first post-combat main phase this turn, there's an additional combat phase followed by an additional main phase. At the beginning of that combat, untap all creatures that attack this turn. This spell also has Rebound. So Rebound's a really interesting mechanic, and I'll read you the rules text. If you cast a spell from your hand, exile it as it resolves. At the beginning of your next upkeep, you may cast this card from exile without paying its mana cost. So you cast this from your hand once, you get additional combat in additional main phase. Then it goes into exile and it casts again on your next turn. Wow. Like, again, Pako just keeps chugging along, and that's the whole point of this deck.
Wants to retrieve all those cards and wants to retrieve them as much as he can for all it's worth.
And the fact, like, these games end super quickly, and one of the ways it ends is by, well, what I named this next section is make them unblockable. So what are some of our ways to make them unblockable, Drew?
All right, there are a few good ways to make them unblockable. First and foremost, Rogue's Passage. You all know what Rogue's Passage does. Tap, add 1 colorless to your mana pool, and pay 4 and tap it. Target creature is unblockable this turn, so whenever you don't have any of your equipable unblockables out, you can always take a turn, pay the 4, make sure he actually punches through, because you want to protect Pako as much as possible, because this deck banks on him attacking at least every single turn that he can.
Absolutely.
The next card, equipment card, Whisper Silk Cloak, staple in most unblockable decks. Equipped creature is unblockable, and equipped creature has Shroud, and it equips for 2 colorless.
Yep.
And you want to place this on primarily for the Shroud. Give Pako some extra protection. Make sure you actually put this on him last, so you can put on the next card that we're talking about here. Very silly card. I absolutely love it though. It's Trailblazer's Boots. Equipped creature has non-basic land walk. What that means is, if your opponent has any sort of non-basic land card on the field, and if you're playing Commander, they will have that, he becomes unblockable. And it's something that you don't think about necessarily. Like, oh, I just have non-basics, I might have to deal with Island Walk or Mountain Walk or what have you. But no, it's any non-basics.
Absolutely.
And any Commander deck worth their salt has at least 1 non-basic in it.
Absolutely.
And the equip cost is 2 colorless.
Yep. And so this next section, again, we're taking extra combats, but what's also good is taking a whole extra turn. And so we got some pretty annoying cards in here for extra turns. The first one we're going to talk about is everyone's favorite extra turn card, which is Expropriate. For 7 colorless, blue, it's a sorcery. It has Council's Dilemma. So what that means is, starting with you, each player votes for time or money. For each time vote. Huh. That's actually really confusing. This is worded so weird now that I actually read this. I'm so used to just saying, okay, vote one. So essentially, you vote time or money. So for each money vote, you choose a permanent owned by the voter and gain control of it. For each time vote, you take an extra turn, and then you exile Expropriate. So, starting with you, you're always going to get an extra turn, because you're not going to gain control of something you own, because you already own it.
Guaranteed extra turn.
So, most people think that the best thing is to just give someone a permanent, but sometimes, if you don't think they can win, I think it's acceptable to sometimes give someone an extra turn, although I don't like doing it. If I have something that's super crucial to my combo, like, I won't let them have it, but, you know, sometimes it's better to take that bullet and just say, here you go, like, whatever. Sometimes you have to just bite the bullet. And so the next one's a pretty simple one. It's Tempura Manipulation. It is 3 generic, blue, 4 sorcery, simply reads, take an extra turn after this one. Simple enough. Just take an extra turn.
Yep, just drop 4, take an extra turn.
Yeah.
And all set and done.
And then finally, we have the spicy one in this deck, which is Karn's Temporal Sundering. For 4 generic, blue, it's a legendary sorcery. And what that means is you can only cast this sorcery if you control a legendary creature or planeswalker. So keep that in mind, which you should usually have Pako or Haldan out, which you have 2 pretty relevant legendaries in your deck. However, this reads, target player takes an extra turn after this one. Return up to 1 target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, then exile Karn's Temporal Sundering. So essentially, you're going to take an extra turn, or you're going to give someone else an extra turn for whatever reason, and then you're going to bounce something relevant, which, again, super relevant most of the time. I mean, taking extra turn and bouncing something problematic, sign me up. And so this next section is random creatures. Now, we don't have a lot of creatures in this deck because we want to bank on Pako getting that plus one counter, but the ones we do have matter. So what are some of the ones we have?
All right. Well, first up is Combat Celebrant. 4/1, 1 red, 2 colorless. If Combat Celebrant hasn't been exerted this turn, you may exert it as it attacks. Exertion, of course, being it doesn't untap during your next untap step. And when you do, untap all other creatures you control, and after this phase, there is an additional combat phase. So keeping up with the taking extra turns, taking extra combats, it just puts that on a creature. You might get like 1 exertion off of this before it gets taken off that combat. So
usually they're just gonna block. It's a 4/1.
Yeah, it's a 4/1. It's very squishy, so it's good for at least good quick extra turn. Next one, continuing with the unblockable trend, Herald of the Streams. 3 colorless, 1 blue for a 2/3 Merfolk warrior. Creatures you control with a +1/+1 counters on them can't be blocked. So with Pako swinging, you are at least guaranteed 1. Well, not so guaranteed. You have a good shot of getting at least 1 +1/+1 counter on that on Pako. So having Herald of the Streams out just to get that base unblockable is good in a pinch. Next one is a little bit of spice, a little bit of jank. I love it. Set Metamorph. 1 colorless, 1 blue, creature shapeshifter. Whenever Set Metamorph attacks or blocks, target opponent reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a creature. Set Metamorph becomes a copy of that card until the end of the turn. Then that player puts all cards revealed this way on the bottom of their library in a random order. Now, if you're playing against a deck that you think would have something that you could possibly use for that turn, whether it be extra blocker or just getting that extra spice with any abilities that creature has, it could turn up some good random nonsense.
Online, I once hit a Elish Norn with it. Helped my team and actually killed most of their board because it just became a copy of Elish Norn. So
again, very jank, very roll the dice, see what you get.
So speaking of spice, let's talk about some of the really spicy stuff in this deck. Starting off is a card from Ikoria actually, which is Song of Creation. This is a 1 colorless, green, blue, red, so Temur enchantment. It reads, you may play an additional land on each of your turns. When you cast a spell, draw 2 cards. At the beginning of your end step, discard your hand. So why I wanted to try this in Pako is because essentially your hand doesn't matter because you have all that stuff with fetch counters usually. So when you cast that stuff, you're gonna draw 2 cards, you're gonna see even more cards. So you essentially have a hand that everyone knows about that you can pick from, and your hand always grows with this. Super spicy card. This next one is Escape to the Wilds. 3 colorless, red, green, for a sorcery. Exile the top 5 cards of your library. You may play cards exiled this way until the end of your next turn. You may play an additional land this turn. So again, you're just trying to see more cards. In a pinch, this gives you 5 cards exiled without fetch counters, mind you. And sometimes it's good enough just to see an extra turn spell or see something relevant that can just pull you back in the game. And probably one of my favorite equipment in this deck, which is I haven't got it to go off yet, but I really wanted to, which is Helm of the Host. So it's 4 generic to cast it. It's a legendary artifact equipment. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a token that's a copy of equipped creature, except that token isn't legendary. If the equipped creature is legendary, that token gains haste, and its cost is 5. So imagine just every combat getting another Pako.
What's worse than 1 Pako, 2 Pako, and having the ability trigger twice?
What's worse than 2 Pako, 3 Pako, and it just keeps growing from there. Now this is really spicy, and people are going to see this coming from a mile away as soon as you cast it. But if you just get that one, activation, you get that one other Pako. I mean, whew.
It can become a big problem real quick.
So the strategy of this deck is pretty simple. It's just trying to kill with commander damage with Pako and disrupting your opponents kind of. Like, you have a small control package in the deck, as you'll see when you look at the deck list. Pako pretty much, he just wants to hit. He just wants to get big, and he wants to hit as much as he can.
He just wants you to give that big slobbering kiss.
Yeah, that big old kiss of, you know, X amount of commander damage each time. So, to the end of this episode, what do we rank the power level? So I would say the power level of this deck is an 8 out of 10. It's, you know, it probably, I've seen some CEDH lists people are trying out. It's not at that level, but you have some strong synergies, and as soon as you start chaining off extra combat or extra turn spells, the deck gets really out of hand. And so, Drew, what do you rate this deck?
I would roughly like same as you, roughly 8, maybe like a 7.5, because normally competitive commander decks that focus around combat are more susceptible to more control and more ways to deal with it. It's much easier to deal with a creature than it is to deal with most stuff.
Yeah.
Of course. But not saying that it isn't strong. It is. I mean, I've been beaten by it like multiple times. I know that. So
it's just knowing when to play and knowing your play group and everything. Well, guys, as you're going to see on screen now is our social medias. Mine is Drew's, but Drew will say his in a minute. So if you want to follow the channel, it's at Real Brass Gaming. If you want to follow me, it's at HexmasterReal. And if you want to follow Espen, it's at ESPN_1926. And Drew, where can we follow you at?
Well, you can definitely follow me, because I didn't create a Twitter today just so people could follow. No, that's not. I didn't do that. Neighbor_gamer1, because apparently that's a popular tag, and I didn't know that. So, and yeah, that's where you can follow me. I'm not sure how much I'm gonna post, but that's where you can follow me.
As long as you post once a year, that'll be good enough for everybody. Well, so guys, for the Brass Gaming Podcast, I'm Christian.
I'm Drew.
And we'll see you later.
Bye-bye.